We are recording. All right. Cliff
Just selected
Dorsey,
got it.
thank you
Yeah.
so much for being on the show.
Wilson, thank you for having me.
A great place to start might be where are you calling in from? Because that in itself is kind of a cool, interesting story.
It is. It has a lot to do with where I'm sitting here and the condition that I'm in. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. I drove last night and I'm here at my manager's house. I'm in a very, very luxurious rental car. And I say that kind of sarcastically. And 2 cups of coffee in. But yeah, I'm up here on doing some business up here in Music City.
That's awesome. And this, I imagine, is not your first time in Nashville. Can you tell me something about Nashville, or at least what it means to you?
So Nashville, I've been here a handful of times now. I think we're going on 7, 8, getting there to and I just signed with my first record label in August, and I've been back and forth quite a bit. They're adding up real quick. And what Nashville means to me is the heritage of the music that I'm doing, which is country music. People come from all around to make this be the central hub and community for that, but also songwriting. Nashville to me is all about the songwriting. Everybody that is trying to do something and has established, they tend to at least live here for their acquired time, or they end up moving here and thriving. But on top of that, what I love, my personal thing, is vintage guitars. So every time I'm here, I gotta go hit up some shops and play something from the '40s, or you know, yeah.
Oh man, that could be its own interview. Like, how does it feel to play guitars made in the 40s or the 30s?
It's There's some reverence to it, you know. You pick it up and in my opinion, you're looking at a piece of art, but you're also there's magic about it. It could have been a huge part in someone's life, and most likely probably it was. So not only is it some craftsmanship that went into an instrument, but it was also someone's livelihood, and it's a piece of history. But and I really do think that you can go from model to model to where you have specific sounds, but each guitar is unique, and the way it was preserved or used, or yeah, just the life that it's lived. I mean, the way I look at it is most guitars, well, a lot of guitars out there have lived a whole lot more of this life than I have. So sitting down with it, there's a reverence, and I play my thing on it. But I don't know, it's got some magic in it.
That's cool. Yeah, definitely. Forgive me because I might have asked you this already in real life, but it might be interesting to talk about. Do you name your guitars or have you ever named your guitars?
I have not. I People say I should, but I think my guitars, they serve different purposes, but and as you know, I bring a lot of guitars to our shows. Um, I tend to break a string or two, and so I have to switch on the fly. And I think last show we played, which your listeners may not be aware, but we play some live music together. I went through 3 guitars, and
I did. That was impressive, but it was also impressive how quickly you were able to get to the next guitar. Because, like, yeah, I noticed it didn't, because it always took me a minute to realize you had broken a string. Like, I feel like I would see the string dangling more than I would hear something happen. Like, you were very good at just smoothly strumming through it. And then I saw, like, as soon as the song was over, you were really good at getting to the next guitar. Like, I was very impressed by that.
that's just improvise, and it's just you gotta keep on rolling. And to answer your question about my guitars too, my guitars to me are it's a chapter type thing in my musical growth.
So true.
And yeah, it's, you remember, and time flies, I'm like, I didn't know I had this guitar for this long, but each one I'll write several songs on. And that's the way I look at it, is the way you write songs, the way you grow in music. Um, they're 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 the pen on the page, if you will. You grow
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah, new paintbrush or new canvas or new whatever. It's like, yeah, it's the tool, it's the instrument.
Yes, yes. So they're all sentimental, but I haven't given them names. I think that I would have to attach personalities and characteristics to them if I did that. So
Yeah, well, no, I actually am the same way. I don't name my guitars either, but they do have titles. I think there may be, well, that's not true. My for whatever reason, my bass does have a name. I call my bass Fauna
okay,
because it's like kind of like it's natural wood finish. It's not, there isn't any like hard lacquer on it. It is a very kind of natural woody thing. And there's a piece that I really like called the what is it? Prelude to an Afternoon of the Faun, something like that. It's a piece of classical music that I was really into at the time, and I named it kind of after that, and also it's like woody nature. But the rest of the guitars, it's like there's one that's blue. You see me play the blue one. That's the one that I played
I
at the gig
have,
we were talking about in High Springs.
yes.
Yeah, that I just call the blue guitar because it's blue. And I don't
Well,
know. I did.
I
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I like fauna. I think that's very natural, and I love the backstory of. I mean, that's the thing, is even the name develops.
Yeah.
It's not it's not just I really like this name and I really like this guitar. It's got an origin, and your six string bass. That one is not the same one, is it?
That's the one I'm talking about, the six string.
Okay, so I mean, yeah, that's your trigger when it comes to like your Willie Nelson reference.
Exactly. Yeah, dude. No, exactly. No, that's how. Cause Fauna's got a deep, deep divot, and it's funny because it's not from a technique that's related to that music at all. Like most of that divot was dug trying to practice slap bass. But
Okay,
then that kind of makes me think about Victor Wooten, who's also a Nashville person who talks about how he learned all of that stuff earlier in his career. Like you're in your early 20s, you really want to slap and tap and learn the whole instrument. You want to have a complete virtuosic control over the thing because that's what your
yes,
drive is initially. But then you realize that what you need to make music, especially playing in any kind of ensemble, is you've got to play a role that is smaller than that in some kind of way.
I think that's the beautiful part of bass, and I think there needs. I do think that there should be more bass is the primary. I love watching lead singers play bass,
Me too.
and 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 do it that way. To me, that's style, and I think it's a shame of, like, to me there's a rarity of that, which that may be another thing that makes it great. But yeah, I think that is the key thing of being a successful bass player, is just enough seasoning. Like, you have
Exactly.
your spot, and not only that, but you hold up the whole band. Drums, rhythm, they do, but those two guys, the bass player and the drummer, if they're together, then everybody else, if they're not following along, then they're not paying attention.
So true.
Yeah,
So true. It's a role. The role of laying down the foundation is extremely important. It's like it's almost like being a manager, being a drummer is like this too. Like you have to kind of find the middle point of everybody's groove and, reestablish it. Say that okay, this is where we're deciding the front and back of the beat are. And then anybody who wants to comment on that in terms of where it should be forward or backward in their part can do that, but this is what I'm saying is the middle. It requires a very certain type of personality that's different from just like squealing the melody all night. The way,
yes,
like a fiddle player, even though really groovy fiddle players are the best, it's like not necessarily their primary responsibility.
And I think you're a master class of that. I mean, I
I
see
appreciate that, man.
you have many skills. I mean, you're in my opinion, when it comes to music, you're a technician. I mean, you you can do many things, but I think what like how your philosophy to music, how you approach, especially playing with bands and such, is exactly that. And I think you do a great job of, this is when I'm coming in, this is what we're doing, this is the purpose, and yeah, you make everything balanced.
Thanks, dude. That is really really nice to hear. I gotta compliment the heck out of you back though, because you've got that like complimentary thing. Like the other half of that is just like straight up it factor and like being the thing. Like you have this like the richness of your voice and of your singing isn't just like physical richness in terms of the vibrations in your ear, man. It's like the sincerity that you're able to deliver it with is you're like, yes, like I worked at a home improvement store. I have and do
Yes.
live this every day. I've ridden in your pickup truck. It's a real truck. It's a great truck, by the way.
It's got the whole it's it's got the whole, I put some tires on it that made a whole lot of noise. I'm like, are you surviving back there, Wilson? Like you're in the back, like you just hear some like roaring of the tires. I think it was actually quite soothing at some point on the way back. But
Especially on the way back, for sure.
yeah, yeah. And thank you for that compliment. I think if I could sum that up in one word of where it comes from, in my point of view, is I just feel blessed, and I think that I get a chance to do what I love, and I'm up on stage with people that I like and love, that are in like super talented. And the fact that they chose to be on that stage that night or day with myself, and we're singing, some original songs, some that I put down on paper whenever I would I wasn't thinking I'm going to do this for a living, and I'm going to play all these shows, and I'm going to win a songwriters award or anything. I was just thinking, this is me pouring out my my influence, how I feel, my perspective, and it's because I love doing it. And professionals, very talented people, pick it up and they play that song with myself for people that are having a great time. So look at that from a point of view. How can you not be having a good time? You know,
So true.
we're
So
very
true.
blessed.
And yeah, it's contagious. It was playing at the brewery in High Springs was really really fun, and it was infectious. I had a good time cuz it's not always necessarily fun to play a brewery for, longer than that 45-minute sweet showcase set. Like if you're
Yeah,
going over an hour, it's kind of like there's going to be a little sweat on the brow, especially if you do it right. And it's like
right.
doing that with the wrong group of people or people whose hearts aren't in it. It's a little bit grueling sometimes.
And I think it being in my hometown of High Springs, I think that is also something that was, in the air. And you, my friend, I gave you a hard role in a sense of, we we uh, we did a lot of improv that night, and I gave it to you. And as I said, on your skill set, you completely delivered.
Thanks,
Like,
man. That's so cool.
yeah,
But it was just, yeah, so fun. And I mean, playing with Logan and John, such a good rhythm
those
section.
guys. Yeah, I love them. And great people on and off stage. And you want to talk about some hard work, they'll put it in. Like, that's for all the listeners out there, musicians do work hard. that's not, that's not something that people really think about when they think of a musician. They're just like, yeah, sure. But these guys, and I mean, Logan does a lot of production work and mixing and mastering, and he is always striving for perfection, but he wants to get perfection organically. He's not trying to push the artist to do what he wants. He'll always be there for feedback and everything, but I mean, he's working 110% to get the most authentic thing. And as a drummer, I mean, killer. I mean, he's yeah. So, and John's a man. He he's always right there, smooth. That's man, McCravey.
good.
McCravey McCravy's a smooth cat. He gets up there with his sunglasses and always very, very level headed. And I respect that man. He's given me some amazing advice, and I'm honored to be up on stage with him. And we're even singing harmonies sometimes. And me, sometimes you don't know what I'm going to do next. So trying to sing harmonies with me, that's a love affair that he's like, all right, I'm sticking with you, man.
He did such a good job at that. That was really, really, it added a lot to the vocal sound, having those harmonies on just those key moments.
Yeah, that's I've noticed more and more, which it's what I fell in love with in music at first. Growing up as a kid is country music's about harmonies. And as I said, him and I we kind of improv on it. So it's not necessarily something you always want to bring into harmonies, but he does an amazing job.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How about like what about High Springs? Because we talked about Nashville, which is easy to talk about because it's like the country place.
Yeah.
North Florida is one of the country places, but it's also this very complex ecosystem of people, and we're talking a little bit about that off camera.
Yes. And I think High Springs in itself, I can tell you the beginning to end from my family's experience. But I think right now, as we can sit back and look at it, High Springs is a amazing environment of, I think there's a lot of art there. We have the Santa Fe River and the springs that bring people from all over to scuba dive or float down the river. And the people there are very, I don't know how to say besides art. They're industrious, but art is everywhere. It's a very colorful town, and two red lights, very small. Um, it started out as a railroad depot, and it was mainly like all the families lived in Alachua, and the men and women went to work in High Springs for the railroad. And my family, my brother's fourth generation CSX railroad, and my great great grandfather moved from Kentucky to High Springs. He fixed steam engines, and that's what he did. So he brought the family there, and my grandfather was a train engineer, drove the train, and so was my great grandfather. And then my dad worked there for 45 years, hired out whenever he was 18, and was an engineer. My brother is a conductor and an engineer. My cousin is, and I'm about the only one that doesn't work for the railroad. Um,
That's amazing. I was going to ask about the train tradition in your family because I got to meet your dad and your brother, which was amazing. They're both really, really
yes,
awesome, like just warm, friendly people, and it was a good night. And but I didn't realize that you guys were also like not only a long line of train conductors and engineers, or just engineers. Sorry, I don't want to misunderstand that.
no, both the
Conductors and
conductor and
engineers. Okay.
engineer, and it used to be a 4-man team on an engine, and it's now condensed to a 2-man team, which is the conductor and engineer. I should know this, but I'm gonna take a swing and guess. I want to say the four-man team was engineer, conductor, brakeman, and it was either I think it was a lineman or it was a signalman.
That makes
But
sense.
yeah, yeah, that was back in the day, and it's condensed. I think they're trying to condense it down to one now. There's some articles out there, but I don't know how that'll fly. Um, but yeah, that's that's what we do, and I can tell you one thing that's in common with music and railroad is you're on the road. Like, um,
Yes,
you
this is
may,
the like the relationship between truckers and country singers. It's like there's this parallel relationship.
you are,
Because
and
we
there's
are eating the
no,
same food at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we are going to be tired and hungry and say yes to that roller grill. You know what I'm talking about? That's going around and it's like I
yeah,
don't know how long,
yeah,
but at least it's hot and it's like, man, I've had everything else. It's when you're on the road for a long time, it's like eventually you've had all your other options. Like, how often can you have that Wendy's salad? And sometimes it's dicey, that Wendy's salad.
oh, let me tell you. I mean, we had a Wendy's experience
That was a great Wendy's
where,
experience.
yeah, I got two Frosties out of the deal.
I remember that.
And the man at the counter was pretty disappointed in me whenever I told him what I had actually ordered. I was very adventurous. Maybe your listeners not as adventurous, so they may not think this is great, but I saw they had the strawberry frosty. I was like, yeah, I want some strawberry frosty, but I'm gonna put chocolate frosty in it too because I want a classic, maybe even be a two level. Well, anyways, I got two separate frosties, chocolate and
Right, because he just
strawberry.
couldn't comprehend. He was like, "There's no way," but I get it because it's like a chocolate-covered strawberry flavored frosty. I get that, man.
Yeah. I said I think he thought it was a run-on sentence, but I said I want a chocolate and strawberry frosty.
Right, right, right.
And then, he took it as very specific as in he wants both. And I told him that and with a smile on my face. I wasn't like, what the heck?
It was a very nice exchange on both sides.
Yeah, and he looked at me. I felt like he was like a stand-up comedian that I was the punchline. And he was just like, okay, sure. Well, here's your two frosties, I'm not doing anything about it. So yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. I think any job that's out on the road, um, you definitely take some risks, and it's a lifestyle that is living fast, but trying to find some type of balance. And that's the one thing about the railroad that I didn't buy into, which I'm currently still living that schedule. Is you don't have a schedule. Like you have a schedule where you have to be, but on like this is when I work, this is when I don't. No, it's you work when you are needed, and that's exactly how it is for the railroad. There's a roster that they run. It's not you work this day, you work that day. It's whenever you're needed on that roster, you go. And the minimum used to be, I don't know if it still is, it was like 4 hours of sleep or something like that. It rested. And then, of course, typically there's enough people on the roster, but come the holiday season, everybody marks off, everybody calls in sick, or everybody puts in their vacation, and it gets real slim.
Right.
So, yeah,
I didn't realize that. Well, I mean, it makes sense, but I hadn't thought about it that you're on the schedule of the trains, right? Like whenever like the goods are
exactly.
shipped or the people have to
They don't
move or
close.
whatever.
Yep, they do not close. And you have to fight to have time with your family. Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, one day we'll sit back and write some songs and be chilling out on the porch. But for now, it's go, go, go.
Right. Right. Exactly. Cool. Well, what else are you gonna do while you're in Nashville this time?
So I am riding with some people. My friend Matt Nichols up here. Every time we get together, we end up writing. at least 2 songs, and he has a killer voice and plays a Martin guitar like no one's business. Um, Him and I were going to get together. Uh, I'm going to. I'm basically getting ready for my first release, and that's for the song "Raise One," which you and I have brought to the stage a few times. And that'll be August 19th. It'll be out Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, Apple Music. Shortly after, there'll be a video releasing on YouTube to support it. And then the 20th, we're having a big celebration at the High Springs Brewery where we played before. And you will be up on stage with myself, and we're going to make some magic up there. I'm excited about that.
Very excited myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be, but to answer your question about this trip, is I'm basically getting trained up and ready. I'm going over a briefing of PR and starting to do radio things, and we'll make it public on the record here. This is my first podcast with Mr. Wilson Stern, but also like in lifetime, this is my first one. So thank
Yeah,
you for
and
letting me be a part of
it's
this.
such an honor for that to be happening here, man. I hope it's been fun.
It
Has
is
it
an
been
honor.
fun so far?
Yes, I love it, and
Good.
I love your setup as well. I got to step into your dojo for a very brief time, and man, the environment that you have in there, the atmosphere, I loved it. I was like, I'm chill. I'm
Cool.
relaxed right away. Yeah.
Good. I'm really glad that you felt that way. Yeah, that was right at in the dead of night when we got back from the stadium gig,
Yes. Yes.
which we gotta call it that.
Yeah, we have to call it. It was the first stadium gig, and we were out there on a baseball field, and we were trying to hit some home runs with the show. We got a lot of boxes of pizza. We got to hang out in the locker rooms. That was our green rooms. I don't know how many people get to do that. I'm sure a lot of musicians have experienced it, but for us, it was a first. And it was very rainy that day. I definitely felt like we played a show in Florida that day.
Oh yeah.
Uh, yeah, we weathered a hurricane, and it was awesome. This it was a USSSA stadium in Melbourne.
Okay, so we gotta also talk about all those S's. There really were three S's there. You did not misspeak at all.
Okay, okay, yeah. I'm trying to, I had to gap it too. I was trying to count while doing it, but
No,
yes,
you did it.
that's
You did it perfectly, and it sounded deliberate. And I want everyone to know that it was that deliberate.
yes, yes. It became a like announcing the show and talking to people about it. It seemed like there was maybe a stutter going on there every time I spoke of it. But yes, it gives you a little bit of anxiety whenever you line up for it.
It's
But
true.
yeah, it was a road trip, and it was our first experience together, and it was very very enjoyable. As soon as because you were going to be playing the 6 string bass that night, Mr. John McCravey, he had to get a fill in, and he's like, man, my man Wilson's back in town, and you're gonna love him. And so we rode down there, and sure enough, I was like, yes, I'm in love with Wilson. So we gotta incorporate him now. So now Mr. Wilson's playing the electric 6 string guitar, and the show that you played when you broke out the slide, which I had seen it, once in rehearsal, but I got a little giddy. I got a little giddy here in the slide. I'm a
It's
big fan
so
fan
fun
of.
to be able to fit that much slide into a show because there were so many times that I was like, oh, I got to have the slide right now. Like, oh, I got to
Yeah.
pull out the slide again. Even halfway through a song, I'd sometimes be like, no, I'm going to finish on the slide.
Yes, and the anthem of the local town, as I said, we were playing in the hometown, is a song that I wrote about the Santa Fe River called Santa Fe, and that has some dark water, deep roots,
Oh
slide
yeah.
sound
Oh
to it.
yeah. The slide on the recording is really, really, that whole track is super well done. It is. It's swampy and dark. Exactly.
Yes. And you did that very, very well.
Thanks, man. That's great.
A lot of compliments. A lot of
Comes
compliments from the crowd.
cool. Comes from loving the songs. Great songs.
Thanks. But yeah, um, I'm excited about being up here and the first release. So just doing some writing, and that's where we're at right now.
Cool, man. So what about aliens?
All right. So aliens are we're talking about outer space.
Sure, we can start in outer space.
Okay.
As you know, it
I,
doesn't end there.
yeah, I know. And I think so aliens, have they been to Earth? Are they out there and we don't know? Do we know? Who really
These
knows?
these are the questions.
These are the questions. This is what keeps me up at night.
These
Actually, it's not what keeps me up at night, but I think you know, if you're in the Air Force and you just flying some jets and you say you've seen a UFO, which just means unidentified flying
just means you
object.
couldn't identify it.
Yeah, and that's true. Fact. Okay. So other than that, I don't know. But if a military guy's telling me that he doesn't know what it is, I know he doesn't know everything, but he is in the military and he's pretty familiar with things that fly.
He's supposed to know about the flying stuff. He's like identifying flying things.
So
Flying objects, that's his job.
if he gets the heebie-jeebies and I'm down here with 2 feet on the ground playing guitar, I'd say I would believe him. And I respect his opinion. And he has more knowledge on that than I do. So yeah, I'm going with it. I'm going with he saw an alien in something that I don't know.
It's like if a doctor said, I have never seen this microbe before that's in your body, and it gives me a scary feeling. And if that's all you heard, you'd be like, wow, this person's a doctor. Maybe it's your physician. You believe that person because they're a professional. They're supposed to be able to look at the thing and identify it. If they can't identify it, that just gives me a feeling that maybe there's a little more out there.
And you know what the next step of that is? You get a second opinion. And the thing is, and the thing is whenever you're flying up in the air and you see a UFO, you don't get a second opinion. You just get another story possibly later on. And I don't know how many there's been, but I'm sure there's more than two. So yeah, aliens, are they there? I don't know. But is it okay that they are? Seems like it.
So far,
Yeah. Yeah.
fine
Good.
from here.
Good for them. If they want to come down and jam a little bit, I'm down. You
I
know.
would love that.
Yeah. I would like to think that they're a fan of Earth's music. Maybe they're on something else going on, but I bet they do podcasts.
Definitely.
Yep, ship to ship as they're freaking us out, you know?
And I bet they love some blues. I feel like everybody loves the sound of the blues. Because that's like, even
Yeah,
though it's not native around the world, everybody responds to it. So I feel like aliens would be like, oh, yeah.
I agree. And I think blues is not a required taste. Blues is something that is embedded in everyone. And it's very, very relatable. People say life is suffering, and I think life isn't easy. But whether I agree with that or not, the fact is you've been there before. Everyone's been there, and the sound that you hear in blues is that emotion.
I agree. And it's that dissonance and then resolution because it's all about the blue notes. It's about the four and a
Yes.
half and the 2.5. It's all about those in-betweeners.
Yeah. I think that, well, one of the best things that I've seen about early blues artists um, is, I don't know what the official word is. Maybe, when they sing a note and they play the same note on guitar or whatever their instrument is, and they're doing runs or whatever it may be, but the syncopation of that to me is, it's magic, but it's also very primal, as in it's instinct, and it shows that this is a musician. Like, I hope to do that one day.
Totally, and I'm sure you will. You definitely will, because your singing already more or less sounds like your melody lines that I hear you play. I feel like it's more or less the same vocabulary.
I think that's a writing aspect of it. It's
But
what I
you're
hear.
saying get working it up so that it's in the moment. So you're talking about someone playing the line and singing at the exact same time, or like it's I'm gonna play this line, and then I'm gonna sing this line. Is it one after the
Uh,
other?
at the exact same time, and it
Okay,
may
yeah.
be, yeah, and it might be. Typically, it's not words. It's just oohs and
Like
ahs, or
scatting.
yes, yeah, best
Yeah, like
best word.
scatting a unison. I guess you'd call it that. Some
Yeah,
people they'll scat a harmony over. They'll be playing some like fast lines, and they'll do it like two guitar players would do it. Like offset by a third or a sixth or some kind of thing, and then they do some kind of like parallel ish thing.
yeah.
I've
One of
seen that.
my um when I'm listening for my pleasure and everything, Matt Corby is a guy that I think is very good at doing both those things. And he has a large spectrum of music as well, but killer guitar player, amazing vocalist. Um, we, not to compare myself to him, but I definitely have a different lower voice, and he has a very high voice, but the soul, man, it's there. I strongly recommend check out some Matt Corby live. The recordings are great, but see the man do the thing in the real life.
That reminds me, was there a time that you decided I'm going to sing this baritone sound, or was it just like you knew as soon as, was it like when your voice changed you were like, "Oh, now I got this," or like how is that, what was that discovery process for you as a vocalist?
Well, I can tell you a little disclaimer of, I knew that no matter what I did, I was going to have to work at it. I wasn't born with a singing voice that I was just like, I can carry a note, I can sing anything, I can do this, that, and the other. I knew that there was going to be a learning curve, and I knew that it wasn't going to be amazing at first. It was going to take some time. But I was 15, and a music store, Music Junction, opened up on Main Street, High Springs. And my mom, she was a barber at a barber shop on Main Street called Jerry's. And she cut hair there for 20 years at least. And she's been a barber for 30, 35. And I would go visit her, and occasionally I would walk down to this music store. I was very interested in it, but I was also very shy 15-year-old. I didn't really I wasn't very openly social with people. I wouldn't be like, "Hey, how you doing today?" and like strike up a conversation. I would, if you spoke to me, I would engage in conversation and probably be a little reserved. But once I got to know you. So I walked in there, I fell in love with the guitar hanging up on the wall. It's a Morgan Monroe Sunburst, looks like a Gibson J45. And I was like, I need that guitar. I don't know why, um, because I don't want to sing in front of anybody. I just want to learn some songs, and like 3 songs tops, and I want to play them on my personal time. So I didn't have a deep voice. I was 15, and I convinced my dad to buy this guitar for me. And I think it was $500. And so I start taking lessons at this music store, Music Junction. And there was a time where I heard Josh Turner for the first time, which has a very, very deep voice, very rich voice. And he came out with a song called Long Black Train. And it's a song that expresses faith and having faith in God. And no matter what the devil brings to you, you know, say no, look out, you know, and you can
Cool.
always look up for encouragement. So I love this song at 15 and I love it now, but I was intrigued by his voice. And so I said, I'm going to like listen to everything Josh Turner that I can. Well, I was doing that, and then I saw the music video, and I saw what Josh Turner looked like because I just heard it on the radio. And he's this very skinny, slender guy. There's no way this deep baritone voice is coming out of this guy. I'm like, that's studio magic, no way. But I said out loud, I was like, Lord, if I had a voice like that, I would do something about it. Well, mind you, I was 15 years old, but a week later, I got a deep voice. And whether I could control it, yeah, a week later, like to the day. And at that point, well, I felt like there was a call to action. So I took my very few lessons and downstrum the whole time, learned Long Black Train. My mom heard me singing it in this very deep voice that I was, trying, that I had just acquired. And she pushed me up in front of church the next week. And that was my worst fear. I said, there's no way I can do this. I'm gonna pass out, or I'm gonna run away or something. And she said, no, you're gonna do it. Like, it'll be fine. And I did. And people that just say amen in my church stood up, gave me a standing ovation. And I'm like, I appreciate this support. I was thinking in my mind, I appreciate the support. You're just being nice. And church is like not the place where me at 15 wanted to be vulnerable in my starting out of music, but it turned out to be the perfect place. And the music instructor said, hey, Cliff, when are you going to sing again? And besides all the people saying you did a good job, that I thought they were just being nice, whenever those people involved in music said, when are you going to sing again? I thought it must not have been that bad. So I went home, I took that deep voice aspect, and I dug into country music. I've always loved country music, and I listened to all my favorite artists, and I did my best to learn. I learned guitar song by song. I didn't break into theory. I was cowboy chords, do it that way, song by song. And that's how my voice developed. And that's why I chose it, I guess, or it chose me, one of the two. Yeah, that's the book on it.
That's cool. Yeah, man. Thank you for sharing that testimony. That's so cool. The other thing that we could note too is, like, I was remarking before that not only has your family always been in the train industry, but you guys have been in the same place for a long time. Like, you said your great grandfather moved the family down to High Springs from Kentucky, right?
Yes, great great grandfather.
And
So even
the
one
great
more.
great, oh, so 4 generations back.
Yes, yes,
Okay, and so then there would have basically just been the train depot, which now is that little, like, downtown area where the Music Junction is. Am I wrong about
correct,
that? Yeah.
correct.
Okay. Cool.
It's the tracks ran directly past, across Main Street, past the brewery, down to there's a peanut mill or factory down there to the left, and it went straight through town. And at one point in time, there's a little building across the street to where the High Springs Herald used to be, which was the local newspaper, that at one point was a bakery, but that was actually the depot building that they moved from, like half a mile down the tracks to there, closer to Main Street. And yeah, my family has bricks with their names on it, in there, and their position in the railroad and how long they worked. And um, yeah, my family, my dad, his side is from High Springs, and he just grew up a local boy, and he's a very outgoing person, but very humble, I'd say. And
Yeah, I get that vibe.
I think he knows a lot, but I know he knows a lot, but he doesn't. He's very social, but he won't answer a question unless you really ask him about it. You know, he's not gonna spread like show off his knowledge or you know. But town history, he's got that. He's
That's
lived
cool.
it. Yeah.
That's awesome. What about the springs? Like that's like the actual physical springs. That's kind of a cool thing. Just for even just to hear about like what the springs are, because it's easy to be like, oh yeah, the beach, and people can picture a beach. It's like, oh, I'm going. Okay, there's like sand, and then there's water, and that's pretty much it. It all goes in a straight line usually, very straightforward. But like going to the springs, there's a few different ways to do it. You like can bring different kinds of equipment. You can interact with it in
Yeah.
all these different ways. Like it's just I don't know. It's a cool thing. Do you like I don't know. Talk about the springs.
I typically go to the springs now in a kayak. And the springs that I'm speaking of are on the Santa Fe River, which is not very far from Santa Fe, or not very far from High Springs. I mean, uh, and Post Springs, if we're talking about my family too, that's where my mom and dad met, by the way. So
Oh, that's awesome.
I owe the creation of myself to the springs, and it's a destination for tubers, like people that want to come out, camp, enjoy the great outdoors. You got Jenny Springs is one that is like a hot destination for that. You come out. This is I'm explaining tubing here, which I think a lot of people are familiar with. But if you're not, you need to experience it. You go upstream. You have a inner tube, and you get all your friends together and literally tie them together. You tie the tubes together, and then you caravan down the springs in the Santa Fe River, which is very skinny. You can throw a rock across it basically. And you're basically going on a tour of each clear spring that's side to side. You go hop in, the springs are 72 degrees year round. It goes down the deep hole, which is the spring down in the earth. You can dive in it. And then if you're not doing that, um, you can be on the boat. You can scuba dive. That's another deal. The aquifer, High Springs aquifer, Florida aquifer goes a very long ways. And Wes Skiles, another local person, and I mean, scuba diving genius. He had responsibility of mapping quite of that, like the whole aquifer out from underneath the ground, and it's just another
Oh
world down
wow.
there. Yeah, that's yeah. If you want to get on some like National Geographic, blow your mind stuff, look up underwater cave diving, and
Oh yeah.
you know, yeah, that's beautiful pictures. And you know, it's pitch dark down there, so you only see whatever you bring your flashlight to point at. And
Mm.
you know, that's you want to talk about aliens.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, that's
that's
another
an
world down
alien
there.
world down there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the Santa Fe, I grew up fishing with a cane pole and a bobber down
Cool.
there. My dad would take me to the springs. Jenny is one that we would go quite a bit. Oh, we got some helicopter action. There we go, sponsored by. And yeah, I learned how to pull a fish out of clear water. Like put my worm on the hook, put it down in the spring, and watch the fish bite it, know when to pull up. And this is me at like 4, you know.
Wow.
So it was very so, and I could swim at 3 or 4 too. That was another thing. I got uh, a tour of the 72-degree water quite a bit, and not scared of gators. I
I
respect them
also
though.
learned to swim really, really young. It was my mom's mom lived on a lake for the whole since I was born, so I would swim from when I actually don't have any memories of not being able to swim.
Yes, yes. What lake?
Well, that's in Keystone Heights. That's my parents are there now, and
Yeah.
that's Lake Brooklyn,
Okay.
which is yeah. I don't know if you're familiar, but you have. Do you know
I've
the one stoplight in Keystone?
Yes, yes. I've been through Keystone quite a bit, and
Okay, yeah.
I
So
think
if you
I
go
think it's a
through,
beautiful town. And yeah, you drive around the lake, right?
yeah, exactly.
Okay. And that's Brooklyn.
Yeah, the big side is Lake Brooklyn. The small side is just the little. They call it a bay. They call it Brooklyn Bay, and there's one street that goes around it, and they live on that street.
Yeah, yeah. Very, very cool. I recently purchased a fifth wheel camper, and we were talking about my truck earlier. That was the whole point of getting that truck was I got a 22-foot camper in 2018, and that was my quote unquote tour bus. And I took that thing all around the state parks and played shows up to Charlotte, North Carolina. Um, that's how I started getting established in Nashville up here. And I recently bought a fifth wheel camper out there for living quarters and also to keep mobile. So yeah, I went out there and bought that. But yeah, I think Keystone's a very beautiful place.
Totally.
It's out there to where the interstate is not close,
Right.
but you can go out there on Lake Brooklyn and catch some bass.
Yeah, totally. No, you really can. It's super nice, very pristine out there. But yeah, you probably have seen their house even if it was only a tiny dot across the lake because if you go the way like you're going out to Jack towards Jacksonville through
Okay,
so
yeah,
across 100 not turning onto 100 but
hmm,
going out to where it's whatever 21 or whatever it is. So you go over that little bridge right after the
yeah.
stoplight in Keystone, and that's the bridge. So to the left side, the big side, that's the not their side, and then the small side's them.
Gotcha, gotcha. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've traveled through there going back and forth to Jack's.
Yeah, right before the YMCA camp.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I always like, there's a YMCA camp here. What's going on?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
I thought
never
that
been
was really
there.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it kind of makes me think of in High Springs, there's also talk about High Springs, Camp Kalakwa is
Oh
a
yeah.
youth camp. Yeah, it's been there forever. They have a water park, they have a zoo, they have um zip lining and rock climbing. And I actually went to a private school that was on the same property there all of my grade school. And so I was very familiar with that. And um, that's just another thing whenever you see the two light town of High Springs, you don't think of. You can easily pass by it, but summer camp has been big out there and youth retreats and yeah. Oh, horse barn, riding horses.
Mhm.
Yeah, they have all of
That's awesome. Well, okay, so speaking of horses, we could talk about your other shows and stuff cuz we could this is probably a good time to go into like other places people can see you cuz we talked about the single release show that's going to be on the 20th, but
it.
you're
Yes,
also going to be performing first on the 13th, right?
correct, correct. That'll be in Gainesville, downtown.
Yeah, Big Top 7 to 10 if I'm correct.
That's it. The
Okay.
big top brewery beer. You got to have some. They just recently put a little stage in there, and that's right there in the center of downtown. It's a beautiful place. But I'll be there 7 to 10, as you said, and I want to. I think the band we'd have to turn to like a bluegrass band to where it wouldn't be too loud in that brick room. But
Right.
yeah,
Yo, an acoustic Cliff Dorsey set, that would be good for Big Top. That would be perfect. I've seen music in there
yes.
before. I didn't realize they had a stage now.
They do. It's very, it's small, but it is a stage, and I always enjoy playing there. Actually, played, which I know on this podcast everyone's quite familiar with Gainesville, but I played right at graduation, and it was amazing to be up on stage and watch people so happy that they got their
Yeah.
accolade, they got it done. And I mean, there was all ages, your typical what you would think being in college, but also people that were in their 40s and 50s, and they brought their friends in town. They're like, hey, I got my masters or whatever it may be,
Mhm.
and they were dancing, having a good time. And you country music, bringing it to Gainesville, I always loved doing, because you that's something that we talked about earlier before we hit record. Is Gainesville is an amazing place, different cultures, different music, different art, and it's definitely a melting pot of culture. And it's always fun to watch the reactions and see the surprises. And the best compliment you can pay me is, I don't really like country music, but I heard you sing and I really like what you're doing. And that doesn't mean I'm doing something different. I'm singing Johnny Cash. I'm singing, you know, John Anderson, Keith Whitley,
Hank Jr.
yeah, Hank
I
Jr.
love I love
Relax.
your family tradition.
Yeah, you gotta drink. The crowd has to have a little bit of some brew, so they can
Yeah.
sing along. Uh, and it's just a fun song. It's a cut loose, and
Yeah.
it's uh it's also from the musician's point of view, which
Right.
I really like it whenever, and maybe that's me, thinking of myself, but I think it's great whenever a musician can talk about being a musician in a song, yet the crowd is so involved that it's about them. Like it's
Absolutely, yeah. It's a musician song, but it's still super relatable. Like you can still get into it in the first person, even if you haven't lived that way, because it's still like everybody has like everybody acts or doesn't act like their parents, and everybody has an opinion or doesn't have an opinion about what other people do, and vice versa.
Yes, yes, and it's also one of those things that it's a, hey, you do you, but and typical like Hank Jr. style. You do you, but mind your own business. I'm doing my thing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we're seeing, happy about it and raising a glass to it. And
The
yeah,
picture of him
I,
on that album cover is so good too.
all his
With the like
uh
open front shirt, you know what I'm talking about?
yes, yes. I mean, he is a musician's musician for sure. I'd
Yeah.
say one thing, like him or not, I think Hank Jr. lived the full life of, I'm going to create what I want to create, and I'm going to live my life as a musician. It wasn't and that's, I think it would be very easy for him to be the son of the infamous Hank Williams Sr. and do it as, this is what I do on the side and make some money on it, and that's, then I have my other thing. But no, he spent his whole life in it, still putting out songs, and he loves music. He definitely loves the blues,
Yeah.
and so full circle on that.
Yep.
But yeah, I tip my hat to that he can stick with it.
Absolutely. Well, cool, man. Well, I guess we'll mention your other couple of next shows, and then maybe that's a good place to end it. Thank you so much for doing this. This has really been one of my favorite episodes, so I'm really looking
Thank
forward to
you.
releasing this.
Wilson, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on here.
Good,
I
man. Well,
mean,
cool.
it's good to be part of the Mind Butter community now. We're in it,
Absolutely.
set in stone. Yeah. Oh, we were talking about horses, and
Yeah,
I,
that was
I,
yes.
you know, speaking from a trainer perspective, we went off the rails. Yeah. There's my dad joke for the day, but yeah. So Ocala, I think that's where we were going with it.
Exactly.
Yes, Ocala, the horse capital, the Equestrian Hotel. I will be there at a spot called the Yellow Pony, and that is a outside show on a patio, and great service, great food. I'll be there 6 to 9:30, and uh, what's the date on that? You're the professional.
That's the 17th, right?
See, that's the 17th. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
7 to
that's my
9:30.
lucky number. Yeah, and 6 to 9:30,
Oh, 6 to
and
9:30.
I'll
My
be playing.
apologies.
You know, I'll be playing their acoustic show,
Cool.
and then, um, like I said, Mr. Wilson is going to be joining me on stage at the release party at the High Springs Brewery, August 20th, and there's an Eventbrite link on my site if you want to go to cliffdorsey.com or Cliff Dorsey Music
I'll
on
put it in the description.
Instagram. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that Raise One's a song for veterans and current military and first responders, people that lay their life down on the line to make our life better. But it's also a song for the educators of the world, the people that their job is never done, whether it be in the medical field. And I mean, we've seen strives and literally work to note in the medical field the past few years, and going through COVID-19, and those people, the song is a cheers. It's a raise a glass to those people that make our life more manageable, better, healthy, and it's something that we take for granted. Normal is very luxurious here where we live, and in the communities that we live in, and maybe not always, but I'd say, in a, a test of time, or us as humans in history, I think we're being pretty comfy. Everything's pretty convenient to us, and so that's what this song is. It's raise your glass for your unsung hero, your local heroes.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, and I love the song. I love listening to it. I love playing it, and I'm really looking forward to the release show at the High Springs Brewery on August 20th. And people should definitely come and check you out in Gainesville at the Big Top and in Ocala at the Equestrian Center at the what kind of pony?
Yellow Pony.
At the Yellow Pony.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Cool,
yell.
man. Awesome. And then there was I think there was one more date on your website. Do you want? But I don't remember what it was.
um I can't even think of it right now. I
Okay,
know
well,
I'm gonna have
pre-shows,
some
that's
more
pretty good. And
music.
this is going to come out today, so this is going to be really, it's going to be current.
Yeah, very nice. Well, I really appreciate you, Wilson. Thank you.
Absolutely,
And
man. Thanks so much for being on.
it's gonna be a pleasure taking the stage with you and doing this release song. And we're on a podcast right now. What is this? Listeners, this man is amazing. You already know from past episodes, but I mean, come on. So thank you. I appreciate you
All right, thank you. Likewise, man. Well, cool. We'll do this again.
for sure. I look forward to it.
All right, me too. Later on, man.
Thank you. Be well.
You too.